Do you watch anime?
Yes, of course.
Papa, she's single and a virgin. Can you be my new mama?
Emotional damage.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to
Ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages, this is Rhys. This is Wednesday. This is an episode of the Mattriarchy. Today, we are going to be talking about spies in comics, spy comics. We are currently joined by Cartoonicus, although I do expect some other people to show up here once they get here. And that's
I hope so.
I hope so. Oh, hey.
Whoop. Just that one.
Hutch has arrived.
Welcome, Hutch.
Hi.
You have yourself a co-pilot.
I do. He's wanting all my attention. Come here.
Are you saying dog is your co-pilot?
Yeah. Hi, buddy. It's okay. He just wants, I don't know why, he just wants all the attention right now.
My dog did that earlier today. It was amazing.
I need to tilt the camera down. That's what's wrong with the camera. Here we go. Hang on.
Would Nick Fury count as a spy? Absolutely.
Oh, I know we're going to be talking about him tonight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
I do need to grab some water. Can you spare me 30? Oh, we're live already. Never mind.
We are live already. Yes. Well,
I didn't realize he's live. I'm sorry. Okay. So much for that. I will.
Yeah, now
I will
he's
go
like,
with
get
those
out of here.
Feel free to get some water, or you're not a slave to the show. I just jumped you on as soon as possible.
Sure.
What we'll do. Well, I grabbed a few selections of comics out of my little file cabinets
Okay.
of spy stuff. I will talk about them while you go get water.
I'll go grab water. Okay.
That sounds great. So, one pride of my collection, the Spy vs. Spy Complete Case Book. Are you Cartoonicus? Do you know about Spy v Spy?
I do. I'm trying to figure out if that is mine or not. I should have grabbed mine.
Okay.
Hold on. I'll be back in a sec.
Okay. Well, Anthony Prohias, I'm not sure how to say it. The dude, I believe, was Cuban and took off from Cuba during the whole Castro thing, and he came to America, started doing comics, and for Mad Magazine had a whole series of spy comics from Mad Magazine.
Okay.
Great classic stuff. And this book, it's got a little bit of biography about Prohias, and it's got every single Spy v Spy comic that he did.
Oh, ever?
Yeah. Yep,
Oh, wow.
yep. Because it wasn't like an ongoing series. It would be like one-page gags, right? And so the two spies would try to find new ways of killing each other, and it wouldn't always go well, right? That was the whole deal. Because they're both kind of bumbling buffoons, and it was such great stuff. And occasionally there'd be spy v spy v spy, and there'd be a sexy girl spy in a gray dress who would cause these two to attack each other, or to foil their plans, or to blow them up, or whatever, all sorts of stuff. But so that was I can't remember. I think I picked that up at a library book sale or something. I'm trying to remember that. Now, one I know that Hutch will want to talk about, because he was a big fan of the series. Cross Gen had a series called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yes.
I only have the first issue, but it is a very James Bondy.
I was going to say, that is such an on-the-nose title.
Yeah. Tony Bedard was the writer for it, and I read the first issue. Like I said, that's all I read. I did enjoy it, but I didn't. I can't talk a lot about it, other than the fact the style was there, and is one of them. Another one I know that Hutch is interested to talk about. Danger Trail, 4-issue.
You've got all 4.
Miniseries.
Wow.
What?
You've got all 4. Great.
I've got all 4. Yeah. And this is a miniseries. Danger Trail was, I'm trying to remember, was it a feature inside of a different comic? I can't remember the
No,
story.
it was its own comic, and it was in the 50s. At first, I don't think he was a spy. The star of it, King Faraday.
King Faraday.
Yeah. I actually started to read the old one, which was by Robert Kanigher and Carmine Infantino. They created him, but I don't think they created him as a spy at first. Either that, or I'm one page into that old story and he sounds like somebody else, and maybe he's later revealed as a spy. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I didn't finish the story. I was like, this isn't the Danger Trail I'm looking for. But yeah, it was.
So the miniseries was done by Carmine Infantino and Len Wein back in the 80s, I think it was, maybe early 90s.
Yeah.
And it's set in the contemporaneous post-crisis DC universe. And
I reread
Faraday is an agent. I mean, he's like Nick Fury in terms of he's near the top of the agency that he works for, and for whatever reason, an agent has gone missing in the field, and instead of assigning somebody like he's supposed to be, and I think Sarge Steele, if I remember the story right, Sarge Steele is like his second in command, and Faraday's like, okay, I'm going to go find the missing asset, and Steele's like, no, you can't do that. We're the people in charge, and he's like, nah, you're the person in charge. I'm out of here.
Actually, Steele is higher up.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, he's like a higher up, but he's like the head of all the agencies, and Faraday is the head of the CBI. And so it's like the head of the FBI going out to do something. You know. Yeah. You don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a super fun spy story. I'm sure we'll talk about that more in detail.
Yes.
But oh, jeepers.
But that was very much on my mind, that particular portrayal of Sarge Steele, because we talked about him so much on the Wonder Woman thing and how he's wrong there. And it's like, this is the way he should be, is in the way Len Wein wrote him. So.
Well, and Sarge Steele is such an interesting character because he didn't start as a government operative, right? Back in the Charlton days, he started, if I remember right, as a private investigator who was so good at his job that he was basically like sought out by the government to come in and become a government agent operative, because he was making such a name for himself in the private sector. And they said, listen, pal, we can get you a pension. So those are some stuff that I brought. I thought you'd talk about that. But Cartoonicus has mentioned that he is a huge fan of spies. They're his favorite genre of action story. And so I guess you have a presentation that you prepare. I got that right?
Yeah, I wanted to mainly talk about how. Oops, where's this? Here we go. I need to present. Share screen.
Here we go.
Here we go. Okay, so obviously we can't talk about spies without talking about the ultimate spy, right? And I don't mean that he's like my favorite or even that he's most famous or anything. What I'm referring to when I call him the ultimate spy is there's this thing I kind of discovered several years ago after watching a lot of Bond movies, a lot of other spy movies and comics, TV, etc. Here's the thing. Have you ever heard of a game called The Simpsons Did It?
I've heard of the episode of the South Park that kind of set that off. Yeah.
Apparently there's a thing where You're supposed to be able to take any episode of any sitcom, describe the plot, and a good Simpsons fan can pull up where the Simpsons did that exact storyline and they did it first, right?
Mhm.
And it becomes a challenge for everybody to do. And then they started applying it to real life, and now everybody thinks the Simpsons are time travelers who are predicting the future.
Right.
Well, what I discovered after watching enough of Spies, and just spy genre is something that has a lot of classic tropes to it, right? What I discovered is Bond did it. Go ahead, name me a classic spy trope, and we'll play the same game. Can show you where an early Bond movie did this first, right? Room full of lasers as a security system, Bond did it.
Mhm.
Jetpacks, Bond did it, right? Guns hidden inside fancy cars, Bond did it. You name it, one thing after another. I keep finding myself going, oh my gosh, even that thing, they did it first, right? So let's talk for a second, if we can. What? Did somebody say something?
He's carrying his Bond collection past the camera.
No, it's
It's what?
It's not Bond. It's Spy Family.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's crazy. It seems everybody just copied Bond at that point, right? And when you copy something enough times, eventually we forget who did it first, and it just becomes that thing that everybody does, right?
Right.
And nowadays, even Bond movies, I've noticed, just copy Bond movies. Like, they're no longer creating new original things like they used to. It seems every Bond movie has to have this thing, that thing, the other thing. You can just see them fitting that little trope in there. We got to make sure we have our dead Bond girl, right? Got to make sure we have our secret, our villain's secret lair in some exotic location, all of that, right?
Yeah.
So before we start, I want to talk about for a second about the mythos of a man who sometimes wears a fancy debonair tuxedo and other times a black, slick, utilitarian stealth suit, working in secret, sliding down on ropes and grapples to break into places. He goes undercover under various identities to infiltrate the underground, gain information. He works out of a special...
Phantom, the notorious Lytton.
Right? He works out of a special HQ with old-fashioned Gothic architecture on the outside, but inside it's a sleek, high-tech mission control center where a female operations manager looking at info on computer screens gets him intel and tells him what to do by radio. A tech nerd outfits him with a host of cool handheld gadgets and weapons, as well as stylish, tricked-out, sporty vehicles, also with hidden gadgets and weapons, and sometimes tanks, all to fight an army of unexpectedly loyal minions and cohorts to stop an evil mastermind with some deformity, usually in the face, that gives them an iconic look and even a special ability or superpower and a code name based on it, who's hidden away in a secret base in some exotic thematic location with a world-ending super weapon, right? Who puts our hero in a needlessly complicated, elaborate trap that takes way too long to kill him, thus allowing him to conveniently have time enough to escape. And even though he's a broken, angry man with a tragic past where he's lost the only people he ever loved, he still finds determination to fight through the enemy forces, stop the villains, save the world, dodge explosions, cause $1 million in collateral damage, and get the girl in the end. So many
through the enemies.
Many girls,
yes,
none of whom he's of course ever willing to commit to, actually, right?
Except for the one who gets killed. Yeah.
By the way, he also flies jets. And if you think I'm still talking about Bond, well, the fact is, I just described Batman. Let that sink in for a second. You see, after years of making it no small secret on this stream that I just really don't care that much for superheroes, I finally get to talk about my favorite genre ever, and I have to bring it back around to superheroes.
Yeah.
Why? Because this is the weird truth about this. The fact is, spies, and especially that classic Bondian super spy we think of, they are really just superheroes at their core. James Bond is a British superhero. And this, oops, sorry, darn it. And this is his costume, right? This is his Batcave. These are his powers. This is his Batmobile, etc., etc., etc. And that's just a funny thing to realize. These, obviously spies in real life are not like this, and there's plenty of spy movies and stuff out there that are super realistic, hardcore stuff. It doesn't fit into this idea. But when Bond reinvented Spies Forever, I don't know if they meant to do this or not, but it was basically like they just took the superheroes idea and they infused it into this genre. And so to this day, like, you can do it the other way around, in fact, because there are, that's right, I have to switch up what my, stop sharing and then go back to present.
The medal says, also, I assume I disagree with Cartoonicus on everything.
I have to point out, you might have seen the movie Triple X. And what I always loved was its subtle dig at the beginning at James Bond, and the absurdity of the, everywhere he goes, he gets to play baccarat with the richest people, wearing the finest stuff and drinking, and instead he's going to, they have a Scottish spy in a tux going to a Rammstein concert, trying to fit in with everyone there, and he stands out like a sore thumb. And they shoot him in the middle of the concert, and everybody's just bouncing his body around in the mosh pit. And it's like this is they're kind of pointing out that this isn't really what spying is like in real life,
right?
Even though that is an absurd movie as well, it's making fun of some of the notions that we have that come from James Bond. So
well, and in fact, there are a lot of parodies out there between Austin Powers and what's his name,
Mr. Bean.
Yeah, what's his name? I can't think of the guy's name.
Johnny English.
Johnny English. Right.
Great movie.
Great theme song.
I think there's like 3 of them.
There are.
I only saw the first. So.
But it's interesting that there are a couple superhero, and of course, someone mentioned Nick Fury, right? Well, Nick Fury is a situation of, especially the farther back you go, you can see a spy trying to be written by a company who clearly, is very familiar with superheroes. And I always found that interesting. It's like you can see where it's like they're trying to write a spy, but they're not. They're really just writing a superhero. And then along came, I can't remember what the writer's name was. He kind of, if I understand correctly, he kind of took hold of him and reinvented him and made him the Nick Fury that he would eventually become, and actually made things.
I've met the dude. I can't remember his name right now.
I think he was like handpicked by Stan Lee because he loved his artwork, but he didn't know what to give him, so he just said he looked at a rack of stuff he was working on at the time and said pick one, and he didn't want to go after something big like the Hulk or something that and have to stand up to that. So he picked, so he picked the most obscure one and ended up completely reinventing it as a result. And then there are
Dave hollered at me he before I said it to him, but because of the 30-second delay. But Steranko had the benefit of having done everything. I don't know if he's literally done everything. So
gotcha.
he was able to infuse a lot of life into Fury, because he's actually done everything that can be done.
And it reminds me also of what I think is early G.I. Joe comics, where it really, or perhaps even the cartoon, where it really seems like there's a lot of superhero going into that, especially a lot of the designs of costumes and stuff. Now that's not spies as much as military, but it's like,
there's definitely some elements of spycraft within G.I. Joe.
I think it's gotten more so over time. Right?
I think even back in the 80s there was. It was because you had the ninjas, clans that were side characters, and Snake Eyes and what's the other one? Snowstorm, and you had so that was part of it. And then you had like the covert operations and the whole like idea of Cobra is really
Right, it's a terrorist
from
organization. So
in a lot of ways that's clipped from the Man from Uncle. Um,
Which Cobra?
Splash.
The one from GI Joe or the one from DC Comics?
The one from
G.I.
GI Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because the one from DC Comics is the villain in the Danger Trail miniseries.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And then, of course, there are even some what I would call technically superhero comics that are almost fringe spy stuff. Batman being one of them. In fact, the two that I can think of are my favorite. Though, if I'm going to choose a super comic, my two favorite include Batman, for as you can see here, an obvious reason, and
Suicide Squad?
nope,
Oh, that's mine.
even
Go
better. Oops, I absolutely stopped.
I'm glad he's not talking about mine then. So I get to talk about mine.
Accidentally stopped sharing there when I meant to swap. There we go. Get back up and
There you go.
share tab.
X-Men.
Right?
Hmm.
Slick black stealth suits, secret underground organization. I mean, they literally fly around in a literal spy jet.
The
Right?
the one thing about X-Men is they have a lot of trappings of spy stuff. They're not doing a lot of the actual spy stuff.
They are not working for a government against another government.
Well, and not only are they not
stuff, but
not only are they not working for government, but they don't do a lot of intelligence gathering because
okay,
they have the get out of jail free card that is Cerebro. So they don't have the need to have any on the ground investigation, on the ground spycraft. In that
but on the other hand, doesn't that make Cerebro essentially your NSA? And
kind of, sort
more
of,
importantly,
but it doesn't have.
What I like about them is that, unlike the Justice League or any individual superhero just being like, "Hey, the city is under attack. I'm going to go help it." We've got this specific organization with a single character as the head of it, and the characters get sent out on missions. Right? They have their headquarters. They go out. They do something. They come back. That is the part to me that is very secret agent-esque, is that they work a whole lot more like an agency than Clark Kent has a secret identity.
I can definitely give you the agency aspect of it, but it doesn't. I wouldn't say that like it's one thing to like point out from the chat, kind of to echo something from the chat. Metal, who could not be with us tonight, says I think spy or espionage is a specific genre with its own tropes and themes, and not everything that includes espionage is in the spy genre. And so a really good example of this is the Italian comic Diabolique, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Diabolique at all, but it has a lot of espionage tradecraft in it, but it's a heist book, right? It's a heist romance, and Diabolique is a supervillain.
It was the last episode of Mystery Science Theater.
Yes, it was the last. They did. So that was D. Well, it's with a K at the end instead of a QE. So, but yeah, it's a heist book. Every caper, every mission is a caper. It's a crime.
You jumped ahead of me. This is what I was actually going to talk about, is that there are fringe similar genres to the spy genre. And heist movies are one of them.
And I would even more than now I kind of get what he's going for with X-Men, although I was never an X-Men reader. I kind of basically understand that. I mean, as far as the world is concerned, the Xavier just has a school where he's raising special gifted kids, and he's hiding the fact that they're all mutants.
Right.
I'm sure that over the huge mythology, everything I'm going to say has been true and not true at some point. But then he's also got a superhero team that is hidden, that is composed of graduates and some of the students, and they go out on missions, and it's not openly, as far as the world is concerned, what that school is there for. And they hide the fact that this plane is leaving and all that with off on missions.
Yeah,
So
and I would say that I would agree that there's a level of covert operations within the X-Men.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't
more
think,
like Team America than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. or Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that covert operations necessarily make it a spy thing, right? And even though there's definitely elements of spy things that have crossed over, it's like Batman. Batman has trappings of spycraft and everything, but the trappings of spycraft it has are also the things that are in common with the spy genre and hard-boiled detective tough guy novels, right? Dashiell Hammett did not write spy books, but there are commonalities in the Venn diagram of 20th century fiction.
And
right?
now, if I may, of course.
Hang on one second. So the thing is, and so oh man, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
It's fine. And so
Tough
but yeah,
guy,
so that's
guy, detective guy.
Yeah. So there are commonalities because there are similarities. But here's what I was gonna say. But Batman, by and large, does not have cases with international stakes, right? So there are a few cases where that comes in,
right? Normally,
but that's not the normal bread and butter of a Batman story,
right?
Not the detective genre, not the spy genre, because Batman's stakes are Gotham City, even though there occasionally are espionage aspects and there are some crossover, and there are stories definitely that bleed over that line, where there are there's a lot of spy elements in the Death in the Family, right? When when Jason takes off, across the world, well, Batman's investigation suddenly is like a thing.
He's chasing after him through European cities and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and Jim Tooner points out Batman versus the KGBs. We read that last fall, and that definitely has elements of spycraft in it. But one of the great things about that story was Batman wasn't a spy, but he was up against spies. So it was Batman being like a cop, with his town and being invaded by these international operatives.
Yeah, although he does foil the assassination of Ronald Reagan by dressing up Alfred as Ronald Reagan with one of those Mission Impossible masks.
Yeah, and there's definitely bleed over.
That's the thing, right? As I was saying, there are some genres that are like fringe genres to spies. One of them is definitely the heist movie because they're doing all that espionage and breaking into places, right? Using the same technology and the look and feel of all. Another one I would say is the detective movie, especially old-fashioned Dick Tracy-like stuff when everybody's in a fedora and trench coat, right? And of course,
I would like
third.
In defense of that idea, a great crossover of those things in the Venn diagram is the Green Hornet.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Who himself is not a spy. He's more of an urban avenger kind of ancillary to the detective character, kind of bridging the line into a costumed hero, kind of not. But one of the big functions that he had through much of his history, especially in the Golden Age stuff and the radio plays, is as a spy smasher. And so, so he was in that similar position of Batman in 10 Nights of the Beast, where there's spies that are invading the city, and Green Hornet is there.
I get to talk for a moment because the best, if you're wanting to say that Batman at times is a spy comic, I would say that the introduction of Ra's al Ghul is basically inspired by James Bond, where you've got a master criminal, a beautiful love interest, and a never-ending series of lesser ninjas willing to be beaten up in the service of the big guy.
He's got this secret location off in the Alps or some
Yep.
exotic location where
And he's often wanting to destroy the
underground
world.
base. Yeah.
Several locations. It's like
Yes.
globe-trotting adventure.
Right.
It's you're in Africa, you're in the Alps, you're in Tibet. You're in
Mhm.
Norway of all things. You never know where you're gonna go when Rage gets involved.
That's another thing, and that's
Yeah.
another thing about X-Men, right? They're always jumping around to different places in the world. And
Yeah.
then the third fringe genre, you're not going to believe this. It's the adventure genre.
Wait, why is this is just your
I hit the wrong
I was
thing.
about to say that.
Sorry. There we go.
Screen lock. There we go. Okay. I was like, is this from something with the pier?
It's like
Indiana Jones was literally
Uh-huh.
developed, believe it or not, as George Lucas's answer to James Bond.
I could see that. Yeah.
It's funny, right? But he's got the beautiful love interest. You've got these
Mhm.
exotic places he's going to. The opening of Temple of Doom, I think, says it best, as he's literally got the white Bond tuxedo, in this big fancy casino, trying to outsmart the villains to get that one little piece of information that he wants, and then their gang comes after him with Tommy guns and all, right?
Yeah.
It's it's just that half the time he happens to be very, very, very dirty is all. Right? And there are a few more palm trees than we often get in Bond. But yeah, it's got its similarities too. And I think of Laura Croft in her sunglasses and dual, guns on her hip and all, right? It's but she's off exploring a temple.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I do have to I definitely appreciate the similarities there, but I do have to agree with Metal again. That adventure is the overarching genre that includes
Adventurer,
espionage, that
right? When you think about
includes
treasure hunter,
the
is what I
action
mean,
detector. Yeah. Well, I think Treasure Island's an adventure story, definitely. But Treasure Island does not have a lot.
Right.
I mean, it
You're
has
right.
some things in common with a spy story, but not really.
Right.
Same thing with Kidnapped. Kidnapped is another, speaking of another adventure story that Lewis with Stevenson, that it has some elements of that, but it's still mostly an adventure story featuring crime and featuring ne'er-do-wells, than a true spy story.
Right.
I think the closest that you'd have in a Stevenson book that I've read that would come close to being a true spy story might be The Black Arrow, because it deals with a lot of political intrigue about within the War of the Roses, that has that kind of international stakes kind of feel to it.
Well, and I think Hutch hit the nail on the head when he was saying that, eventually you look enough places, you're going to find a little bit of something everywhere you look, right?
Yeah.
And so here I am saying, well, I don't really care for superheroes, but I love spies. But then I'm saying, but superheroes and spies are the same thing. How can I say that then, right? Well, so much of it just comes down to style, right? How things look, how things feel, right? And no wonder that my two favorite superheroes happen to be the ones that feel less like superheroes and more like spies. And so, mainly we're just getting at is that there's a strange kind of crossover. And because we are a comic stream here, of course, we get to talk a lot about that, because everywhere you look, there's one of those two is going to have elements of the other in it. And so we get to talk about Nick Fury. We get to talk about X-Men.
Well, I recently, as I said, I reread Danger Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And Danger Trail, I don't think it was intended as a parody, but I do think it is very much I'm doing a spy comic. I need to do the world traveler that goes to all the big top cities. He goes to Paris. He goes to London. He goes to Venice. And you have the gondola scene. You have a skiing scene. You have it's like he's just Len Wein is just basically saying, I got to have everything in here. I've got to have him go on the Orient Express and have him get up on the train and fight two guys on top of the train. And I mean, just because these things are expected if you're doing spy movies, and not because it's actually good. I don't mean to say that it's specifically terrible, but it's like, do you remember one of the Wayne's World movies? Mike Myers says, I've always wanted to open a door and just see a room where a bunch of people are training. And at the time, I hadn't watched a lot of James Bond movies, so I didn't know what he was even making fun of. He just opens the door and there's people having, kung fu fights back there, and then he closes it. And it's like, they actually do that in this book. They have the characters are walking around. There's people, doing combat training in the background, and people are prepping vehicles, and it's like it's doing the nature of what you expect, but it isn't necessarily entertaining on its own. And it almost comes across as trite. Like, I've seen all this. I've seen everything in here before. There's very few things in there that are inventive, although there were a couple. Mostly just stuff that didn't try to be big showy, spy comic stuff, where I think that a better spy comic is Suicide Squad, which it has the leader who gets them together and says, here's our objective, here's how we're going in. They're superheroes, but superheroes and supervillains actually, and almost none of them wear their outfits, because the whole point is to be,
I've only seen film, and they always have their outfits.
Right, and only John Ostrander can write the Suicide Squad well, and only John Ostrander can really get Amanda Waller right, and that's because if you just, I liked the second Suicide Squad movie, but even it really didn't get Suicide Squad very well.
Okay. We gotta talk about.
I didn't want to divert onto the movies. I really
I know, but I
go ahead.
I have to talk about. So, Hutch, here's the situation. A couple months ago, you said, "Hey, Rhys, I'm thinking about going through a series of streams to talk about the DC movies. What do you think?" And I said, "I hate them so much." And you're like, "I know. I think it'd be great on the show. We need to have that." I said, "Okay." So I went through and I've watched several of them, and I just hate them so much. So I went back and rewatched the first Suicide Squad. Oh, it's so terrible. And then I watched the new Suicide Squad, and I'm like, oh, it's so terrible, because it's the same movie. It's the same movie. I can't, and I really have very low tolerance for I can't remember his name right now. The guy who did Super.
James Gunn.
James Gunn. I have very low tolerance for James Gunn's nonsense. And I just really didn't like the movie.
You're so hopeful for the new movies then.
So angry. But here's the thing about the Suicide Squad that I didn't think either movie did well. The second movie almost got it, but not really. In neither of the movies are the villains doing anything a superhero team couldn't be doing. There's
well, they do manage to kill a bunch of good people in a stupid competition.
Well, the thing is, they're not necessarily even good people. We don't know. I mean, you're told later on that they are, but you don't see any evidence of that. So
they're doing
like a bait and switch
taking
later
showers
on.
and doing dishes and.
But I mean, even that's not a plot point. Like the plot of the story doesn't dictate that. That's just James Gunn trying to be an edgy boy, and it's like, dude, you're 50. Give it a freaking break. Anyway.
So basically, Gunn is just the anti-Abrams.
Yeah, I didn't want to get on. I didn't want to get on the subject of the movies at all. The point is, if you haven't read the comics, it's really all geared towards being a spy thing in concept, and trying to get spy work done, not just end up with a big showy action piece. Which is
the whole point. One of the things Ostrander did is, like, the whole idea is, like, these guys, Task Force X, they're getting in and they're getting out. Right. That's the thing is, and so you might have big, superhero style fights that happen in there, but there's still the overarching mission of don't get seen.
Mhm.
So like if you go in and the you're invading an enemy base because there's a spy organization that's planning to unleash a terrorist threat against America or whatever,
Yeah.
you may face up against those armies, but like squares don't know you exist,
Yeah.
right? There's so much of it's about deniability, and if you fall behind, you get left behind because we disavow your existence.
Right.
And, like that's such a big part of it is like they intentionally they do a great job of talking about how they're doing this shady stuff because they're that it's all about not being noticed. And I didn't feel that was really present in the movie because like the stuff that they're hiding, right? There was like some sort of government conspiracy in the second movie, and there was covering up for their ineptitude in the first movie. But
Right.
it's like there's nothing that like you couldn't have replaced that with the Justice League and had the same movie, right? It would have been exactly the same movie, especially with the first one, but I think the second one too, because like Batman, like there's lots of times where like where Batman or Booster Gold or whoever will like, oh, here's an alien threat. I'm going to do the superhero thing and fight them, and then we find out, oh my goodness, Amanda Waller was behind it the whole time. It's like or whoever, right? Or over in Marvel, Hulk, right? Or Hulk is like becomes the victim of some sort of big plot where the government's out to get him, and then Bruce Banner discovers that it's actually his dick of a father-in-law who's out to like screw him over for marrying his daughter, right? And so it's like okay, like there's nothing. Granted, Hulk is still kind of an anti-hero character, but I felt like the whole premise of Suicide Squad was wasted in both of those movies because the point of it is that it's supposed to be super shady stuff, not like we're going to make the villains look like heroes because the stakes are so bad. And that both of the movies were there to make the heroes look like villains. I mean, the villains look like heroes because the stakes were so bad. And it was like, I really felt like it was a letdown. It was a letdown because I mean,
the thing about the Suicide Squad is that they've always had a bunch of heroes that are corralling the villains and keeping them in line without actually having Amanda Waller one phone call away who's ready to detonate on all their bombs. It's about being separated from her. And yeah, they have the ability. Back then it was just a wrist explosive, which is what's so funny about Slipknot getting blown up is that, I mean, they tried to do that in the first movie. They completely flubbed it. But the whole point is that Slipknot is a guy whose entire ability is that he ties knots with his two hands. And Captain Boomerang says, I don't think these things actually explode. I'm going to make a run for it and see. And he gets Slipknot to do that and run off. And it starts beeping. He's like, yeah, he said that's going to be fake. And he keeps going and it blows up. And Captain Boomerang's like, okay, now I know that these things really do blow up. And meanwhile, he's blasted the hand off one of his cohorts who now cannot tie knots, which is the one thing he does. But the villains and the heroes being a team, and it's like the villains, if it's up to them, they would be cutting throats right and left. And you have to have the heroes kind of riding herd on it. And they even had one story where Nemesis, one of the heroes, like they've got a whole bunch of people in a hotel, and they're like, well, you got to keep them quiet, but we got to escape. And the villains are like, okay, and they start pulling out their knives. He's like, no. Okay, I will stay here and watch them, and you go. And he basically sacrifices himself by making sure he gets captured, but he keeps everybody alive by doing that because the villains would be ready to just kill everybody there and leave. And it's like that. That's why it's so tense, and it's not something that you could just send in the Justice League to do.
and one of the things about Ostrander's take on the whole thing too was that like you had different levels of villains. Like you had villains that were like cutthroat, and villains that were like the top, right? The ones that were just like, of course, Wade turned the top into a real psycho. But my point is that you had the silly gimmick villains, right?
Dr. Light
and Dr. Light, or you had the real, or you had the real cutthroat guys that were like totally willing to kill people, and they would or like or Peacemaker and the original. And that was the other thing I hated about the movie is their take on Peacemaker just made me so angry. Damn, gun. Okay.
You got distracted by Peacemaker.
I did.
Yeah.
So, but but that it had this. So you had a lot of drama and conflict between these villains would play off of each other, and because they would advocate for different things. Then you have the human agents and the other heroes who would be corralling this behavior to keep people on mission and to keep people if we deviate from the mission, we people will die, and if you want to get out, we don't want people to die because that's the whole point. And so that's one of the things that I don't feel like either of the movies captured the spirit of that. But
yeah, who was the one in the back? Oh, dang, I don't remember who that was. But that's the Thinker. That's Cliff Carmichael as the Thinker, right? Okay. So, that's a later version of the team, but yeah, they do have more costumes. Yeah, they do go into more costumes. Like I think that was kind of like when the book was having some trouble. Maybe they after they came back, they did stuff where they're just wearing their costumes more often, and they aren't doing so much spy covert stuff.
Well, and then the stuff that I've read in the early part of the series does have like Ben Turner in costume pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And so I think that's because he was a hero. So
yeah,
that's part of that one. But yeah, and this art piece I recognize that is from the Who's Who in the DC Universe loose leafs from 91, 92, somewhere there.
Yeah,
so, Yep,
I got those back here.
I've got a bunch of them. They're on the shelf in the other room. I'm not going to get them out right now. Okay, so from the chat, there's a couple things. Abigail asks, has anyone brought up Black Widow yet? Is there actual spy work with her? There was spy stuff over in Marvel. I've not read a ton of that, but I do know that there were some when she was guesting in Captain America. They had some international stuff, and her background as a spy played into their intelligence gathering for some of their missions. But I don't remember enough of the details to all of that. Because it's been a really long time since I read those comics. They're in file
note
cabinet.
that nowadays so many people's entire understanding of both her and Nick Fury will be with the two of them working together.
Yep.
And plus,
well, I think there was some stuff. I think there was a time, if I'm remembering right, where she was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. in the main continuity. In between stints when she was on the Avengers, but I don't remember enough to say that for certain. Metal says, I'm not sure the Suicide Squad was ever written well. It was. When Ostrander invented it, he wrote it well.
Yeah.
So he also.
Why aren't you joining us?
Fizz also says the Suicide Squad is being aggressively pushed by DC for some reason. It's because
Is it just because
the gun movie, it's the Harley Quinn thing is one aspect of it. The second thing, and it's a great excuse for, even though she's still a villain, they get to play her as a hero, and they really, really want to play Harley as the hero for reasons. The other, because she's really popular with cosplayers. Actually, it was either this week or last week. Perch released a video about the popularity of Harley Quinn. That is really interesting to look tie into that. But the other thing about it is that Gunn made a lot of money with that picture, and I think that is Warner really likes money. So,
True.
Twitless says, catching up a bit, I actually have an academic piece that states Bond isn't technically a superhero, but I can see Cartoonicus's point.
That's interesting. That means he beat me to it.
I would agree that Bond is not a hero because there is no altruism with Bond. There is
you are right about that. Yes.
There is, because he is patriotic, but his patriotism is just barely subservient to his
Yeah.
not aggrandizement. Um, uh, 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 he loves to please
Make no
himself.
mistake, Bond is far from my favorite spy.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting, but the Bond is with exception of one storyline, Bond is not really good. He is merely good at his job. So,
But there is a comic about him.
oh yeah,
Actually, there are probably several. There's Young Bond out there. This one I discovered seems to be rather grounded in how it's. Well, there are people with robotic arms, but it's what was it called again? That's right. It's just called James Bond. I'd never heard of this before. It's from 2015.
and I do know that there was a series that was running back in like at least I think it was 2017. There is a fellow from the Panhandle out here, and I'm gonna forget his name, but he ended up working for DC, doing a bunch of stuff for Flash, and he did before he got published big time. He did some indie stuff, including Pinocchio Vampire Slayer.
Because everybody has to be a vampire slayer.
Yeah.
This was before it was super trendy, though. But yeah, and it was anyway. I cannot remember the cat's name right now.
Does
But
he
he-
like
yeah.
lie and grow his nose, and then he
Yes.
punches his nose through the center of the vampire, and that's how he kills him?
Yeah, well, he'll break his nose off and grind it into spikes. So yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a gag as well as being like an action story. But I can't remember the cat's name right now.
Figaro?
I'm such a big idiot. What?
In Disney, it's Figaro.
No. The fellow. the not a physical cat.
Not the cat.
The fellow who was the writer.
Oh,
Who
sorry.
I've met his family out in Llewellyn, here in Nebraska, but I cannot remember his name, and I'm really embarrassed about not remembering it. Anyway, he was a regular writer for IDW's James Bond, and they did one story that it was done as pages, but the original is just one long scroll, and then it was chopped into pages and published that way. But the whole thing is it's panelless. It's a panelless comic, I guess.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The whole thing was drawn, and so there's the whole thing that maybe it's not panelist, but it's like it's a bunch of images that are in there. So yeah.
What is this artwork from?
This is from a
This is
different.
that very here. Let me get back to it.
Oh.
Where'd it go? Here. Ah, wrong one. We got so many tabs up. So it's just called James Bond, and this particular one is Burger.
Burger. Okay.
So, Isaac had
Very
asked us.
violent.
I'm sorry, you were saying?
It is rather violent.
Yes,
Yeah.
as it should be. Isaac had asked a while back ago, does assassinating a target in the backstory count as spy work for Black Widow? In her case, yes. And Metal said, I 100% agree. Bond doesn't count technically as a superhero. Common ancestors but different beasts. Absolutely. Fizz says, I'd like to make a comic about a superheroine who can turn invisible as a spy comic, but no one seems to want it. Well, that's never stopped me from doing anything. The Bourne series, definitely. Those are spy books. I would say. I mean, they're spy stories for certain.
Yeah.
And I have not seen all of them. But weren't they adapted from some particular like book series?
I don't know. Honestly, I've never seen more than the first movie.
Yeah, I can't recall.
I've only seen the first one.
So, Mission Impossible, of course, adapted from the television program. And I don't know, there's probably been Mission Impossible comics. I'll bet Dell or Gold Key released Mission Impossible comics back in the day. Definitely seems like a possibility. I know Man from U.N.C.L.E. had a series
Right.
back in the day.
Oh, and
So-
of course, you'll love this one.
Squirrel.
Secret
squirrel.
That's great. That's
Oh,
great.
There's a I don't know if you call it a trope, but there's a certain thing I've seen. It usually comes in comedy comics like this that just annoys me to death. They continually refer to Secret Squirrel as something like, well, no, actually, in this case, it's just the fact that everywhere he goes, everybody seems to know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or in Danger Mouse, they continually refer to him as, and I quote, the world's most famous secret agent. Famous and
Part
secret
of that is
do not belong in the same sentence together.
A lot of that is because like Danger Mouse is supposed to be a pastiche. So
It's so crazy though.
As
Like,
is
even
Archer.
Bond, even
Yeah,
Bond,
Archer
everywhere
making
he
fun of
goes,
that.
he introduces himself with his real name. Right? He never tries to hide his identity. He's supposed to be a secret agent. It's so stupid. Oh, what was it? In Spies in Disguise, they literally open up with him saying, "You know how you know you're the world's greatest spy? Everybody knows your name."
That's hilarious.
I'm like, if he had, thank goodness he said spy and not secret agent, because I would have walked out of that theater right then and there.
So, Fizz says Mission Impossible movies are just action movies like Fast and Furious. I don't know that I necessarily agree.
They are
I have not
super
seen
high
all of the
octane,
Mission Impossibles, but the
but
first
they do a
two.
lot of that.
The first one,
intricate stuff.
the first one is a spy movie.
Yeah, well, the second one
Much
too.
more.
I think the second one is too.
I've
but-
seen all of them.
I hated the second one so much I never rewatched it. So
That's fair. That's fair. It's not great.
The third one will
I
fix
enjoyed it, but it wasn't great.
Watch the third one; it'll make up for everything. It's the moment the series actually started to get good.
Yeah. The fourth one is my favorite, but the first one, I've watched it so many times, and aside from not understanding how email works when they were making this movie, it is a very good, much more covert. It's not aiming for big action pieces so much as it's focusing on the spy work of rooting out, their objectives and figuring out what's going on.
I also just realized I've been yelling all the night, so sorry about that.
I didn't know this.
One of the things too about the first one is it was fairly true, although not entirely true. It's fairly true to the Mission Impossible formula, which the Metal points out that the original series is infinitely better than the movies, and a lot of that's because
definitely
the
different.
Well, and the reasoning is that the theme of the TV series was that everybody's, there was a team, there were specialists. You got to focus on different aspects of spycraft. And the first movie did a decent job of that, but by the time the second movie, at least, and I didn't watch past that, so I don't know. But the second movie was absolutely the Tom Cruise-a-thon. And there was a lot of Tom Cruise in the first movie, but it also made sense because of how it was cut for that.
Did you just say you haven't watched anything past the second movie?
No.
The second one is terrible. The third one is good. And the fourth one is wonderful.
Yeah, I was underwhelmed with the second one, and I was like, I have other things to do with my life. So
I will tell you, it's never going to be like the first one again. That was probably the most spyish it's ever been. The new movies definitely get more and more high octane action as you go, but they also never cease to have that element of extremely complicated, detailed operations that require several people all doing stuff at the same time to pull off.
Well, and that actually brings me to a movie that's another one of these liminal cases, but it's one of my favorites, Ronin, which definitely is in the register of spy films, in terms of the way it's portrayed, but in a lot of ways is just a caper picture, with amazing set pieces. And I love Ronin. That is so much fun. If I hadn't buried my DVD in a recent reorganization of our stuff, I'd pull that out today because it's so much fun. The Flyfox Pro had said about 20 minutes ago, said, "Is this that new Halo 2 game? I'm too busy drawing a comic to watch this." So,
make us all feel bad.
Yeah, he's working on a couple projects. They're going to be pretty exciting out there in the world. So, he and I have been talking about it stuff. So that's fun.
So let's say we go ahead before it's too late and start talking about some of the things we really wanted to talk about tonight.
Yeah. Well. I want to go through the chat. There's so much good stuff in the chat.
Okay,
here.
true.
Says Twitless had said that the films didn't capture the spirit of dinosaur painting, and I don't know what that means, but I absolutely love that comment,
either.
regardless of the fact that
about...
what it's talking about.
No, it can't be Batman. That's not a painting.
Yeah. So, Tankatron suggests Tim Kennedy's new book for spy fiction. Man from Uncle movie. I did not know there was a movie for Man from Uncle. I guess I wasn't aware of that.
Oh yeah, that's how I know it. And I actually got to see the remake several years ago. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. Metal says the Avengers from '61 is a great espionage media. Definitely. But man, that movie that came out in the late 90s
movie. Oh my gosh.
That's a real stinker, man.
Yeah.
That was my first exposure to the Avengers.
Okay, rule number 1: never make Sean Connery the villain. Okay,
okay. Here's the thing about this that I have to say. The one thing about the movie, everything in the movie was just a snooze. But anytime Connery was on screen, it was I was stuck. I was captivated watching it, and it was one of those things where I kept wanting to turn it off, and I'm like, oh no, I can't. I got to see what Connery does next. What kind of insane thing is this man going to do next?
And just to clarify, and in case anybody needs it in the chat here, we're not talking about Marvel's Avengers. Okay?
Yes.
Let me bring up an image of what the actual 1960s Avengers is.
Yeah, but isn't Sean Connery in the name of Scottish independence? He's bringing out a weather control weapon or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So did he do that just because it was about Scottish independence?
Well, I think he did it for the money.
What's that?
I believe he did it for the money.
Well, sure. That's one of the many movies his many movie choices that caused him to decide I don't know how to pick movie roles, and he quit making movies. That all the way up to LXG.
Although I did like what's it called, Entrapment, which is another heist movie. So
yes, Entrapment was decent.
Colin is 100% on point. She's lost everything that made her entertaining as a character. Yeah.
This is the Avengers.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are people who will never know this thing exists.
This is
the most polite group of heroes ever written.
It's Mrs. Kensington. Yeah.
So, Twitless pointed out cat being slang is such a generational marker, but not for my generation.
I was going to say, I generally think of it as 60s.
That's a leftover from growing up with my boomer dad. And from when he was a very small boy in the 50s, and his older brothers were hip to the jive, hip to that beatnik jive, and so that's stuck from then. So.
I'm sorry, what's the name of the cat? That's part of this whole show.
The fellow.
But he had an answer. That's what's so funny.
We're gonna have to clip that, aren't we?
So this is excuse Cartoonicus for not being down with your hip lingo. Oh, and yes, Spy versus Spy was mentioned. I've Fly Fox.
I believe we're going to talk about Spy versus Spy, right?
We've got my big book with me. Yeah. So we got is there anything else here? Okay, I think we're pretty much the original.
Oh goodness, I may not be able to stay up much longer.
Oh well, we'll have to hurry up. Oh, Dinosaur Task Force X dinosaur painting.
I'm usually good for hours, but yeah, was there dinosaur painting? I don't get that at all. Was there somebody in Mission Impossible who painted dinosaurs?
Not that I remember.
It's a Task Force X.
In the TV show.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so moving on. So the so how? I guess one of the questions we have to go on here is and to wrap it up so that Hutch doesn't pass out on us, is what kind of exposure have you guys had to spy comics? We know we've talked about a bunch of the different titles on there, but what is it about spy comics have you read? What are your favorites? What are the things that stand out to you about spy comics?
Well, I am definitely a connoisseur of Spy versus Spy, and I have a book that is roughly the same size as yours, so I don't know if it also happens to be everything, and I just didn't realize. Oh no, this is Spy versus Spy 2. So this is a second part 2, apparently, of a collection. Interesting. And of course, in preparation for this stream, because we had been talking about it before, I went and watched almost the entire first season of Spy Family, because there was no way I was going to check out the actual manga in order to do my homework on that one.
Well, come on, there's not that much.
Oh no, I just can't deal with manga. Sorry, reading backwards gives me a headache.
It's only 12 volumes that are out right now. 13 is about like in a couple months. So, no, I love Spy Family, man. It's one of the greatest comics. Like, I don't want to oversell it by say ever, but I get so much enjoyment out of Spy Family.
Well, then let's talk about it.
So, well, Spy Family has actual espionage in it. Spy Family, they do this amazing thing where they take like spy material from the from the mid-century and the aesthetics of mid-century stuff, and they do such a great job of capturing the spirit and the style of it all, and I just love it. So, but the premise is that this is definitely not Berlin, in definitely not 1968.
Yeah.
Okay, and there are two nations that had been at war in something that definitely wasn't World War II, and the two nations are Westerlos and Ostania, which definitely do not mean East and West. So, Twilight is a spy from the West who has been living in the East because the East has a currently ousted dictator who is may get his way back into power and has threatened to reignite the war that had ravaged the communities before this and the two nations before this. And so Twilight, the spy who's a master of disguise and really good at almost everything except interpersonal relationships. That's what he thinks he's really bad at.
Right.
And he's
just like Bond.
Just like Bond. But instead of using women as objects, he just avoids contact entirely because he's a kinder, better Bond, I guess. And so yeah, Westalis and Ostania. There you go. And so he's commissioned to try to infiltrate the inner circle of Desmond, the former leader of the party in the East, and to try to convince him that peace is a better path forward. But he can't do it in a way. That's really good.
Yeah, like
That's really good. That's really good. And I think you're right. I think that's exactly correct. So anyway, in order to do this, the Desmond's super closed off, and the only way he can get in, that Twilight can get in, is they have one connection to the outside world that doesn't go through their inner circle only, and that is he has his youngest son is at this super exclusive private school, and Twilight's told to get a family. He's told to get a family to infiltrate the school. So Twilight goes and adopts a little girl from an orphanage, and he, uses all the spy stuff and greases palms and gets totally off record, so it looks like it's really his daughter. But he needs a wife because he needs to look super respectable to get into this school. So he finds this lonely paper pusher, this secretary that works down at City Hall, who's never dated and is very sad, and says, and it was sweet and kind, and her name is Your Briar, the Twilight's got a secret identity and the whole business, and he convinces her to fake marry him because she has been out. She's been an outsider within her office community, and she doesn't like that. And she has her own set of secrets, which is that she's a secretly trained, super powerful assassin. and so she's trying to keep the people's suspicion away from her, and she's almost 30, and if she doesn't settle down, it's going to look weird. Yes, no, that's true. That is a good point. Twitless, but but he doesn't even. Yeah. Anyway, the point is that these two fake parents are perfect for each other, and neither of them can really understand that. And they're also slowly falling in love with each other. They don't necessarily notice it. And the little girl that Twilight has adopted happens to be a telepath. And so you have all of these fun superpower dynamics that are within the story.
Well, this is where the interest factor comes into me, because everybody has a secret that they're keeping from everybody, right?
Yep.
And in some cases, like with the telepathy, that means that some people even know each other's secrets, and they're keeping that a secret from the other person.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that's really interesting too is that Anya, the little girl, knows her parents' secrets, but she also is so ignorant of the way the world works that she doesn't really know anything about it, right? She doesn't understand what these things all mean. So she looks at it through the eyes of like a 4-year-old, which she's probably 4, pretending to be 6.
She must understand some stuff. I couldn't believe it. Literally, the first episode, they have her being taken away by this lady, I think, to measure her for some new clothes. And she says, "Help, I'm being sold to traffickers." I was like, oh my gosh. Did they actually just...
Yeah, and one of the other great things about this, well, I mean, and there's knowing and there's knowing too. That's another aspect about too, because context matters so much of the thing. But her favorite show is a spy show, Ethereal Dragon Digging This Up, which is the one of my favorite things about it is they've done so much great world building that instead of having like that the comics within this world are all spy comics, and so Anya is invested into this fantasy concept of spy craft, and then she's thrown into it with this cross genre, really fun elements in it, and everybody is flawed and everybody has strengths, but despite this, you find everybody being accidentally really sincere, and so like one of the great things I love about it is that Twilight, like I said, is really bad at relationships, that he thinks he is, because he doesn't know how to connect to people because he's got all this past and he's lies for a living, but he ends up genuinely caring about other people, and he falls into that because it's maintaining relationships are crucial to his mission, but at the same time he's just like genuinely invested in these folks and coming about it funny in strange ways. And so I have really enjoyed the series. Now earlier Twitless said he felt like it was dragging a little bit, and well, I can't agree, but part of that I think too is that they've done such a thorough job of explaining or building this large background cast that it's really enjoyable to kind of look into the lives and the histories of these other characters that reinforce this core family story. Although I am anxious. I hope it doesn't. I mean, one of the problems with the way that manga is made in Japan is that the more popular something is, the more likely it is to just keep going and going and going. And there's the I part of me is very anxious to see the resolution of the unrequited story.
I gotta admit that I've only watched the first season so far, but to me I think it was the first 3 episodes were far more interesting than the entire rest of the show so far, because there's clearly this overall joke going on, right? These people have these super exciting lives, and they're having to use their abilities to focus on the mundane, everyday stuff, right? But earlier on, what we seemed like we were seeing was a pretty good balance between the two, so that you would see what they do in real life, and then you would see how they take that home afterward, and everything culminating in what really was the best moment of the show for me so far, when he actually proposes to her. They're fighting off these goons, and he tosses a grenade, right? And he uses the pin from the grenade as the ring to propose to her while hiding behind some boxes with an explosion going on in the background, right? Yep. And I was like, okay, that just sold me on this show. This is the kind of fun, silly stuff that just gets really interesting. And then ever since then, I'm telling you, it dropped like a rock. Most of the time, we just see them doing everyday stuff and none of the spy stuff. And if they do, I mean, it is, there's action, or there's, exciting action-y, stuff that is, like she'll, go to catch something and it'll be really dramatic, but it'll just be her trying to stop, something from falling on somebody's head, at school or something. I'm not actually seeing it really drive the story forward. And that is what I'm missing, unfortunately. I really would have liked to see a nice balance where they can go back and forth between the two worlds.
Well, I can't comment to the anime because I haven't seen it. But
right, I recognize it could be totally different.
Yeah.
For all I know,
it's not totally different. I've heard, but there definitely is at least some difference in it, and that's one of those things that like to that part of it, that proposal, ta-da, right there, right? Yeah. That is this far into the first volume.
Oh my gosh!
Right. So, and remember,
dang.
Right?
That's true.
Yeah, manga pacing is going to be radically different because of how they structure it. I actually agree with Cartoonicus a little bit. There's something a little, I don't know if it's what it's exactly causing it. There just seemed to be something a little off rhythm for me with Spy X Family lately. I felt like there were some big buildups that happened, and then things just kind of lag a little bit in later volumes. I don't know if it's something about the pacing just feels like it's settled into almost a sitcom-y routine at times. And the spy stuff is always rearing its head, but it's I don't know, just something just feels a little off with the pacing sometimes. It's kind of hard to put my finger on it.
The thing is, again, they'll still keep something of the joke. They'll have somebody do something incredibly energetic to do the smallest, mundane thing, right? But here's the thing. Mm-hmm. It's anime. Anime has never been subtle about anything its an entire history. Every type of anime does that exact kind of thing all the time, whether it's spies or not. It could be a slice of life thing in a high school, and somebody hops over a little stream and you have to go in order to do it. So it's not like I'm really even laughing at that because I'm just like, I've seen this 1,000 times. I'm looking for the spy stuff to actually come into play and to drive at least 50% of the story, so that we can actually appreciate the mundane stuff when we see it, because we can actually compare the two.
It's there. It's there, like I said, but there are some interesting, because it's trying to balance such high drama, and nothing's, I think, expresses. Hey everybody, it's me, and I partially jumped in today to kind of add in a little bit of some thoughts I've got. Good to see everybody, by the way.
Yeah.
It's been a while. But I think the spy genre and we could probably pick it apart a little bit into spy, espionage, and counterintelligence and such, and general secret agenting, if you wanted to. But I would say that one thing that the espionage spy genre does really well, when it's doing it very well, is really sells the audience on high stakes anxiety almost, because of this basically being a thriller. Because the point of being a spy, if we go down to being a spy, right, is the fact that you're doing something usually in enemy territory, and there's usually a very high. Rhys, you were kind of mentioning this a little bit. There's a very high risk associated with it if you get caught. If you're a superhero and you get caught, doing something, like usually, like if you're Superman, you just like run away or fly away. Batman will, make a quick escape. So there's like elements of it there, but in a more grounded spy setting, if your cover gets, they say that your cover getting blown, right? If your cover gets blown, it's often right before you die, or right before you are put into a prison camp where you're going to wish that you were dead. So like the stakes cannot be higher in that kind of a scenario. Behind enemy lines, you're usually having to live like either a dual life or living a lie. You have to live only with your wits, really. I think spy fiction, it's less. This is something I think that the American genre, because Americans are always about like might, triumphing, but in a lot of, I think, really great spy fiction, it's more about your wits than it is about your fisticuffs, right? Because the whole point is that you might be able to beat a couple of people, but if the government under which you are living finds out who you are, you're not going to be able to fisticuff like the entire, German army. So that's why you have to be sneaky. That's why you have to use your wits. And so with Spy X Family,
it's the definitely not German army.
Right? Yeah. In Spy X Family, like they're trying to balance, I think, the most tense thriller genre you could technically have with this kind of slice of life thing. And so I think
you're right on the money there too. And I think part of it is that the slice of life aspects in the story are there to ingratiate and endear the cast of characters to you, so that when you have the caper on the boat, when you have the
that's a good one,
crisis, when you have the other moments of high tension, right, that they become heightened because you're more invested in this, how Anya's never had a home and she feels at home with these people. You're invested in the life of this dog. You're invested in this budding romance, this unrequited affection between these two characters.
Now that I think about it, I think it's due to the fact that they spend so long doing the slice of life. I kind of forget that it's a spy thing, and then I'm like, I think that's the awkwardness that I'm feeling. Kind of Cartoonicus is talking about.
That may well be part of it.
Happen, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me. Oh, sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I have a question. Are you reading it through like the Shonen Jump app, or are you reading the Tankobon as they come out?
I'm reading individual chapters.
Okay. See, I am reading them by the volume, like once a quarter. I'll sit down and I'll read the whole thing. So I'm getting like the entire thing is in one big chunk. And so then so my experience of that is gonna be different because I'm reading through the slice of life stuff, like boom, 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 boom. And then it's like, oh my goodness, there's an assassin, So
right.
If you're reading it every week or so, you'll be like, wow, this is like the fourth week of slice of life.
Yeah. No, I think like Chuck, the TV series Chuck was in the spy slice of life crossover.
I was going to compare it to Chuck. Yeah,
had the same kind of issue with it, and of course, I think I love the show Chuck, but they did the Will They Won't They for so many seasons that
I haven't watched anything past season 1. Don't tell me how it happens.
I won't.
My reward to myself if I lost weight was that I would finally get to watch season 2 and 3 and 4.
Oh, really? Okay, so we can't.
I bought them and then a decade went by and I don't know where they are now. So I got to find them.
Okay.
Everybody put spoilers in chat. I'm kidding.
No spoilers. But I will tell you this much: the even though like I complain about the will they won't they kind of stuff, virtually every episode is still super enjoyable, right? So like as a binge item, like it's pretty fun as a binge thing. So a lot of that irritation with the will they won't they aspect of it goes away if you're just like watching 3 episodes a night or whatever. So
And that may be a thing right there, actually, because no, I don't. I also watched just the first season of Chuck. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I'm pretty sure they did spice it up every episode. Right? They would have had to, and that's the deal. That's kind of the beat of something like that, right? Shows tend to have your monster of the week. Because they're done in episodes individually. Here's our thing this week. Here's our thing next week. When you're writing a comic book, especially a graphic novel, there's a different pace to it. I could see where Spy Family might suffer trying to be turned into a show. It has to take from the book, but it's also having to do episode by episode. And maybe I'm just not getting the beat that I would expect because they're trying to be so faithful to the original, and it's just not working.
Well, and I haven't, like I said, I have not seen the anime, but I was talking to Tim Lim, who has read and seen both of them. And one of the things that I do know is that there's a one-off gag in one of the volumes where Anya gets a merit at the school she's at, and so for a reward, they take her for a fancy weekend at a castle. And that's just like a one-off, one-page gag in the comic. But I guess in the in the anime, they made this whole episode about that.
Yeah.
The pacing in anime is very interesting because Metal could definitely speak more a lot to this, but it's because of the way that they kind of decompress action in a manga. What you're seeing when you look at that huge tankobon could sometimes be like up to 10, 15, 20 pages of essentially one fight scene.
Yep.
And so one episode of an anime is going to blow right through that. And so what you'll end up noticing, especially if you release the anime right, pretty early on in the manga run, is that you have to you have to start expanding certain things. Like you have either filler episodes or what have you. Oh gosh, we've lost touch.
Bummer.
He was saying he was getting tired.
Yeah, he said he might have to take off.
See ya, Hutch.
See ya. Good to see you.
Darn, he never got to talk about any of his comics.
Yeah, we'll have to bring it back around for my favorite next time.
So speaking of which, because actually I can't stay too long myself, but I wanted to drop in, and actually this is something Isaac has brought up. So my spy comic that I think is really worth it is also by Matt Kint, who for Dark Horse, he's a very cerebral writer in a lot of ways. He's done mind management and some other things. So he did another one before.
Okay, yeah. I picked up an issue of that. Good curious that was. That was a weird book, man.
But he's putting like a lot of stuff on each page. You know what I mean? Like in his pages, there's a lot of like thought going into that. So I think it's before he did.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's just weird.
Yeah. Before he did Spy Superb, I think it was before that. He did something called Super Spy. And Super Spy was something I picked up in my local library and thumbed through, and it has all those markings of what I was mentioning earlier with the spy genre being about high tension and everything. Yep. So like the very beginning of Super Spy, and it's each chapter is a lot of the chapters are kind of told. They're not necessarily told chronologically. That's, I think, something Kint does in some of his work. And so you have to kind of assemble the story yourself, kind of like individual dossiers. And so you're putting these pieces together like a spy might put together some a file to kind of piece together the narrative. And, it's about, it's a fictional story, but it's set during the World War II Paris occupation by Germany. Okay. So you have a German and I think British counterintelligence working against each other. And so they're stealing code books, they're decoding stuff. I think Kent actually puts codes in the actual comic itself that I think you can kind of piece together. Cool. So it's really, really tense. So highly recommend it. I put it in private chat, the link to the Amazon page, if you want to take a look at that briefly. But it's a very high recommend, and like I said, it really captures the whole the stress of being a spy, and even the one of the things that it does is it goes into like the toll that it takes on people. And so it's, you know, there are people who just, you know, they want out of the spy game because they're tired of living a lie. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm tired of pretending to have to, like, you know, to flirt or be in relationships because you know, because it's a high placed, you know, I have to pretend to be interested in this person. I have to have a fake relationship with this person because it will get me closer to my objective of getting information or turning this person against his or her government. One of the things that's again also fascinating about being a spy that isn't as much looked at in something like James Bond is the fact that you are being a spy often means pretending to be a you're going behind enemy lines, and often you're you're turning somebody against their government, or you are turned yourself, or pretending that you are loyal. And so it really kind of screws with the concept of loyalty, right? Because if you believe in, you know, your country and you get someone to turn on their country, you're getting them to commit treason, you know, which is like the biggest sin against a nation.
Or
that was a whole theme in I recently saw The Courier and with Benedict Cumberbatch. And yeah, that was a huge theme inside of that one. That was a pretty good movie.
I was going to say, or you have to build a relationship with someone, get close to them, and then stab them in the back.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, in that sense, you're being a traitor,
Right.
but even, you know, you are put in these, like, in these betrayal. That's again the other side of spy fiction that I find to be fascinating is that concept of loyalty and treason, and the fact that being a spy usually means that you are either being a traitor or acting the traitor, or being a traitor in other contexts, right? Maybe you're loyal to your country, but you have to betray a friend you had to make. You know what I mean? Like the toll that takes on your soul, and the risks that you're making, all in the name of, you know, this so-called higher purpose. Like that's some like deep stuff. Yeah. And so like obviously it's fun to play with spy fiction and the other, you know, tropes of it. I'm not complaining about that at all. I actually enjoy quite a bit of Bond myself, but that's one of the things I do like about something like Super Spy. Is it kind of delves into some of those aspects. You know, right. What do you do when the woman that you have, you know, had a relationship with for, you know, you've turned her against her country and she's communicating to you that her cover's been blown and she's about to die, and you have to move on because you still have a mission to conduct. Like again, just the layers to that are fascinating. So very Matt Kint definitely, like I said, is, I think, really knows how to, you know, dive into that. So I've not read Spy Superb, but if it's anything like Super Spy, then it would be really good.
It has a very cover. I just wanted to say, because the way she's crouched down and fit within the edges of the book, it's like she's trapped in a box.
Oh yeah. No, good point. Yep.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the things too. Like even Mind Management has some of the same kind of. And I've only read the first issue, mind you. That was not meant as a joke. But with that's one of those things that those factors play into it. I'm really interested in this book, so I may have to see about trying to pick it up before we do my favorite spy comic. So
yeah, Isaac brought up another point, which is it's I don't know if he's talking about Spy Superb, but it's the fact that they're not really spies. They're people pushed to do things by handlers. Which is you've got the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy guy at the head of the spy ring, and his job is to save England, and so he's using people as resources to accomplish those goals. But what he's using them to do is it costs a terrible price, and that price can have long-reaching repercussions because even if at best, right. You know, I feel like it's going to be difficult for you to have relationships in the future. You know, when you are used as a spy, right? The people who are using you know, especially if you've been turned, right? if you're like a double agent or something like that. There's that, age old, idea of, well, if you betray your own home nation, we might give you a sanctuary here, but we're never going to trust you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, so just stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's just really very cerebral, deep, traumatizing stuff. So I think spy fiction actually has some of the most, it doesn't always explore this, but it has the potential to explore some of the deepest conflicts at the root of the human psyche and how we relate to the concept of nation, right? Which is something that is, a very important concept. So, you can unmake a person in a spy fiction. Like it's so yeah, there's some really great stuff.
Cool. Well, I think that's some great stuff. Well, let's go ahead and wrap the show there for the week. Thanks for coming by, Twitless.
Yeah,
I think that's a great place to end on, frankly. Next week, I believe it's Wonder Woman, I think.
Okay.
Let me look at the schedule just to make sure
Back
that I'm not
to
stupid.
Sergeant Steele.
Yep, back to thing. Oh, come on, brain. Sorry, guys. I was trying to look it up, but my brain went stupid on me. Which sometimes happens because I'm kind of stupid sometimes. Oh no, next week's Rat Fist.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's right. So
Doug Knaples, right?
yeah, Doug Knaples' Rat Fist for next week. Wonder Woman will be in a month, the 5th of December. So of February.
I know somewhere down the lines we will be doing my favorite spy comic. So
Which will be 1 month from next week. Is actually how that's going to shake up.
I feel like I've blown my load too early. That's just gonna be this one.
Yeah.
It's
this
just,
was
Well,
as a comic or as a?
Everyone will read it.
I thought this was a novel.
Then we can talk about it there. So, and I haven't decided what mine is for sure. So,
Neither have I, honestly. Believe it or not.
yeah, sounds like a plan. So, okay, well, that's the show for this time, guys. Thanks you so much for tuning in. I hope you all
I
have
do
a
want to
great.
shill, if you don't mind.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Let Cartoonicus shill his spy comic that he just came out with.
It's not a spy comic.
I mean, okay, so yeah, his totally not a.
It's not a spy comic.
If it is, it has the weirdest name ever. No, yeah, I basically transformed a game I was working on. By the way, I put the link in the private chat there. Is it this up? I want to make sure it's up. Okay. Yeah, this is a oops, where to go? Anyway, this is a not webtoon. It's a Tapas comic. I'll probably be putting on webtoon and others later. But this is one of those scrolling web comics. And what I did it as it's two things. It's meant to feature kind of like an old 1960s Hanna-Barbera-esque feel to it. And then two, it's made to feel like you're playing a video game where
adventure game. You get to kind of like
like a point and click adventure. You'll actually have choices to make, much like a build your own story. And there are all kinds of little clues and animations and stuff hidden throughout the pages, ways for you to interact with it, and a secret story underlying. I guess that's why Twitless is referring to it as a spy comic. More like a detective comic, I suppose, if anything. But I'd sooner connect it to like Nancy Drew. But I mean, there's a cute kitty in it, so read it. So.
That's funny. So, but yeah, sounds like a good time, a fun time. I actually did read the first few pages. It is cute as heck.
Thank you. Hopefully that's a good thing. Yeah. I only have the first 7 chapters up right now, but I've got several. I've got a lot of stuff in bulk. I'll be just releasing them in sections because when you're doing, build your own story, then I need to release several possibilities all at once. Overall, this will be a one shot. There'll probably be about 30, 40 chapters total.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Harriet the
That's-
Spy. Yeah.
That's a whole lot of cat comic there.
This is Cartoonicus. He's been working on this for a while,
Mm-hmm.
since I've met him.
Well, I have been still working on stuff we just released. After 2 years, Mrs. H had penciled and inked a New Year's comic for Forces as a fill-in, and it took me 2 years to get the thing colored like I wanted, but that went up. I'm going to be hopefully re-releasing some more Forces stuff coming up here real soon, and that's the story. All I'm at is just trying to figure out a way to make all the things fit and with all the stuff for now, and that's what we're about. What about you, Twitless? What are you busy with other than your doctoral thesis?
Yeah, right now it's a lot of school stuff, but I'll be getting more Omega Girls out shortly. I'm
cool.
catching up on some things. I've got a major arc to come out, so I just have to get that out. So definitely, people who are interested in that will have more to see soon.
And come back next week to hear us talk about Rat Fist. So that should be exciting. Hopefully everybody can make it. Schedule is subject to change because I was supposed to contact Marmaduke last week about it and totally spaced off that was the week I was supposed to do. So hopefully he can still make it. So anyway, that's the story. And until next time, get out there and read some comics, and we'll catch you guys all out later. So have a good night.